Welcome back to my devlog series for a mysterious new genre I'm working on. Let's run through the tasks I gave myself for my last video. Manual component collisions. This one was about lag spikes when constantly forcing components together. The lag would occur because I let the requested change happen, and then if components are colliding, I undo the change bit by bit until they don't overlap anymore. However, doing it this way means I may need to check hundreds of times per frame. I fixed it by making it so that for each check I cut the change in half, which massively reduces the number of iterations required. Mouse relative component movement. Still not perfect, but I was able to make component movement much more consistent. It no longer depends on the way the camera or weapon is facing, and simply applies the movement directly to the component's relative directions. This probably won't work once there are components that can move in more complex directions, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Hand orientation. I've also made improvements here, with lots of helpful suggestions from all of you in the comments and in my Discord server. Link in the description. By doing some dot products with the vector from the camera to the hand, and both of the hand's pitch and yaw axes, the hands now always face directly away from the camera. Actually, I doubled the angle so that technically isn't true anymore, but I think the effect looks better when exaggerated. Thanks to a certain Discord user, you know who you are, I added the secret sauce find quat between normals after the above operations, and now the hands also stay aligned to the surface they're touching. Single and double action revolvers. Now you can feel the subtle handling differences between the two types. I modified the controls so that holding the mouse button down corresponds to pulling the trigger back. In the case of single action revolvers, this doesn't seem to do anything, but the trigger pull is fairly quick. For double action, the trigger pull is heavier, but that's all you need to do to fire a shot. Jumping back to single action, only after manually cocking the hammer does pulling the trigger fire a shot. More interesting than that though, let's hold the trigger down and fan the hammer. Now you can see that we fire as fast as we fan the hammer, which is much faster than the double action revolver can do, but requires more skill, or at least more knowledge. Yes, these are pretty subtle differences, but I would still say that they're good examples of the gun feel that I want to emphasize. Again, minor examples, but an important step in showing how player-driven research can affect gameplay. I want you to be able to fully design and optimize guns your way. Now let's take a moment to talk about the feedback I've gotten from all of you out there. First, I would like to say thank you to all the people who wished me good luck and expressed their interest in the project. Reading things like that really helps amp up motivation to keep chugging along, especially when toiling away hours staring at bad hand rotation. To be straight up front though, I only get a few hours each day, maybe, to work on this outside of real life stuff, so please don't expect progress to be blazing fast. And just know that I absolutely wish I could dedicate more time to powering through this, but real life is important too. Maybe I'll be able to do this as my full-time job someday, if I can prove to enough people I've got something worth backing here, but I'd really rather focus on the game itself and niche fans who want the same thing I do, rather than trying to build some huge following or contort the project to appeal to the masses. Anyway, thanks again to all of you out there. Of course, I always appreciate critical comments as well, since it shows that those people took the time to really consider what the concept means to them. People mostly seem to be concerned about how tedious the controls might end up being. In short, I agree. While the feedback is mostly focused on reloading, some people seem to be comparing this game with reflex-focused shooters. So let me say this. The primary purpose of this game is for me to figure out how to design a reactive game world that integrates what the player made into itself. It isn't a game just about building guns or just about shooting all the enemies the fastest. It's about asking the player an open-ended question and using their answer to change the world. I believe overemphasizing player performance can quickly trivialize this design aspect. Now this will be the first game I build this way, but it won't be the last. Maybe check back in 5 years to see if I've figured out how to make this work for wizards yet. Anyway, if you want a gun that's super fast to reload, design one. But not every challenge the game throws at you will be a level from Doom. Speaking of tedious reloading, for the people who are concerned about that, I mentioned that I was considering allowing players to record and play back reload sequences. I think this would be good enough to fix any tedious feelings during combat, but I'm always interested in more options. So let me know what ideas you all have besides option 1, deal with it, meaning design guns you like to use, that's the point of the game. Option 2, record and playback reloads, add a hardcore mode with playback feature disabled. Option 3, add a slow-mo mode during reloading to give you more game time to work with. I hope none of that sounded too mean, as I really do value everyone's feedback. Instead, let's talk about the next big feature I've been working on, custom ammunition. Now, when I say custom ammo, I don't mean just add fire damage or make this a shot shell. I want to give access to as many parameters as possible for players to tweak. But how do I choose those parameters? Internal ballistics describes what happens before the bullet leaves the barrel. Essentially, as soon as the bullet leaves the barrel, the pressure from the gunpowder no longer affects the bullet, and from there on the bullet is only going to be slowing down. This is the muzzle velocity of the bullet. So if that's the case, then the barrel length must be one of our parameters. Now, I won't walk you through everything, but here's a short list of other things to consider. Weight of the bullet,
the strength of the chamber, the amount of powder, atmospheric pressure, powder burn rate, ignition temperature, powder density, specific energy, specific heat, specific gas content, gas pressure, rate, flying bolt radius, powder pressure,
and barrel friction. Classifying these parameters and understanding what role they play took quite a bit of research digging through ballistics papers,
chemical research, thermodynamics, equations, rocket propulsion mechanics, piston dynamics, molecular analysis, pressure dynamics, historical empirical data, lines, interdisciplinary physics,
and a lot of industrial jargon. And here's the culmination of all that. Okay, let's just tweak the parameters a bit, and well, nothing's perfect on the first or 100th try, right? So I eventually worked out a few issues with more research and came to a more complete understanding of the processes behind internal ballistics. But I need to take a moment to note that I'm not trying to make a perfect bullet simulator here. Wait, what? So why did you go through all that? What was the point? I'm sure there are a lot of people out there ready to say, just pick some parameters like accuracy spread and fire rate and put modifiers on attachments. My answer to that is, I like doing this sort of research and learning about how things work. We should have fun while we're developing games too. And what does +1 accuracy even mean? I want to reach beyond a jigsaw puzzle of arbitrary limitations and enable exploration of the entire solution space. The game should present well-defined problem spaces to the player, and at the same time provide the widest possible solution space. The real goal is to translate the sense of discovery and accomplishment that comes from creation and optimization. So what am I going to do with this information? Now that I understand the process down to the gritty physical details, I can begin simplifying and abstracting the equations away from the real-world nasty physics into more manageable and controllable parameters for players. For example, do players want to figure out the exact cubic millimeters the casing needs to be to fit a specific mass of a certain chemical formula in relation to the ambient temperature and pressure? Maybe someone does. Actually, I'm sure someone out there wants that. But that isn't what I want. Instead, simplify it down to asking how much energy is in it and how fast does it explode. We won't limit ourselves to existing or even physically possible gunpowders to make it work. Rather, I'll use my research to sort of reverse engineer ways to make the player's parameters reasonably affect other aspects of the game. For example, the costs of making rounds might go way up when you break reality. At the end of the day, you won't get a life sim, but you'll have something that is always consistent with its own rule set, rather than me randomly assigning plus or minus XYZ attributes to 10 puzzle pieces. So what's on the to-do list this time? Once I've figured out exactly which parameters I want exposed to the player, I'll create a simple UI for quickly testing and tuning the parameters. When I've got things tuned mostly sensibly, I want to convert that UI into a diegetic interface, meaning it should be a physical part of the game world. I'm thinking something inspired by reloading presses that people who hand load ammo would use. Let me know if you have cool ideas for how players should make custom ammo that aren't just a UI menu. Well, I think that's about it until next time. For any returning viewers, do you like videos like this that explain the details and my thought process? Or would you rather I only post an update whenever I get 2 or 3 big features done? Personally, I'm not really into the hype logs that are basically just check out this ad for my game. I like to hear about how devs approach problems and the reasons behind why they did things the way they did. But I'm interested to hear what kind of devlogs other people like. Since doing this does take time away from development, I wouldn't mind posting less often to get more dev time in, if people only want to see big feature updates.